Yay! Right? We signed a... Oh. Man. I mean, with Mexico signing a deal with a free trade deal with the United States, well, it kind of leaves Canada out in the cold, hey? And I want to travel back in time and revisit how we got here. How did we get here? How did the United States and Mexico come to a free trade agreement before Canada and the United States? We've had a very close relationship with the United States for a very long time. You'd think that our trade deal could have been done, right? Like, bam, very, very quick. Well, let's see. We're going to go back to the G7. This is June 9th, right after the G7 summit. And at this point in time, there's a very, very, there's a framework and almost a deal, a bilateral deal between Trump's United States and Trudeau's Canada. Everybody's very excited about it, and Trump has to leave early to go and negotiate peace with North Korea. So if this was Obama going to negotiate peace with North Korea, it would be a very, very big deal. But because it's Trump, well, it's not a big deal. So whatever, that's fine. So here's Trump. We're going to listen to him for a minute, and then there's three things that he touches on here. He says that it would be a very bad thing for Canada and a very bad thing for Mexico, but it would be good for the United States, but he's not looking to play that game. He says that right at the end of this clip that I'm going to show you. So you're going to hear Trump's a bad guy, and he's the boogeyman who wants to hurt Canada. He says very clearly here, he's not looking to play that game. So here we go.
So that you never catch, that's not a good thing to do. And we have very, very strong measures that take care of that because we do so much. The numbers are so astronomically against them in terms of anything as per your question. We win that war 1,000 times out of 1,000. Yes, sir. So two things can
The question was, are you close to a deal on Nafta?
Happen on Nafta. We'll either leave it the way it is as a threesome deal with Canada, with the United States and Mexico, and change it very substantially. We're talking about very big changes. Or we're going to make a deal directly with Canada, directly with Mexico. Both of those things could happen. If a deal isn't made, that would be a very bad thing for Canada, and it would be a very bad thing for Mexico. For the United States, frankly, it would be a good thing. But I'm not looking to do that. I'm not looking to play that game. So,
okay, and now he goes talking about the sunset clauses, and the link is in the description, 13 minutes. You can watch the rest of it, all of it if you like. But Trump is really, really, really clear here. And then Justin Trudeau had his post-G7 presser. And if you want to see my breakdown of all of that, there's a link in the description for Trudeau's trade war. And that's the part one. And then there's another follow-up part kind of fleshing that out even a little bit more. So you can check that out if you're interested. But here's the tweet after Trudeau's presser. PM Justin Trudeau of Canada acted so meek and mild during our G7 meetings only to give us a news conference after I left, saying that, quote, U.S. tariffs were kind of insulting. And he will, quote, not be pushed around. Very dishonest and weak. Our tariffs are in response to his of 270% on dairy. Okay, so I have to tell you, watching Donald Trump say, here's what we're going to do, and there are other parts in the press conference there just a few minutes before where he says it's going to change or we're just going to stop trading with them. Like, he has a hammer and we've got a feather. We being Canada. Our leverage is nothing now. Like, it was very little before, way back. Like, we had, sure, their jobs and all sorts of stuff. But Trump's a businessman and a problem solver. So if Canada is being problematic and it is costing him money, yeah, he's going to go somewhere else. And look at that. He went down to Mexico. So I want to show you guys, this is the National on June 10th. This is Mr. Russo, and Mr. Russo was part of the negotiation team, and he's going to explain kind of what happened with Trudeau's team. And this is important. It's important. So let's watch it, and I've got two more clips for you after this.
Working the phones today, and Rob, what have you heard from Canadian officials?
Well, let me take you back, first of all, to 5 p.m. on Friday in Charlevoix, okay? There's a bilateral meeting at the end of the first day of the G7 summit between President Trump and Prime Minister Trudeau, and it's going so well People are very excited. The Prime Minister's key advisors are there. Larry Kudlow is there. They're talking trade. Steve Mnuchin has been working the phones. He's not there working the phones with Finance Minister Bill Morneau. How well is it going? Trump has been asking for a sunset clause. At one point, he waved away the notion of a sunset clause, surprising his own chief negotiator, according to people who were there. And people think it's great. Next thing they...
So I'm not sure which he's talking about. In the context of the speech that he's saying there, it sounds like he's saying Trump waved away the sunset clause, but the presser the timeline doesn't make sense if he's saying Trump waved it away. It sounds like actually he meant Trudeau waved away the sunset clause, surprising his own advisor. But anyway, it may be here nor there. That may be an important sticking point. But carry on.
Here at the end of this summit, they're having a little celebration at the end of it all when the tweet is read out to them. And their reaction, Ian, is this has got to be a parody tweet. They didn't believe that it was actually real. They had to check. They checked and found out it was real, and then realized at that moment that they were in a dangerous parallel political universe and had to jump into action.
So then they have to figure out what their strategy is going to be. Tell us about that.
Yeah, the first thing they did was make some calls, some very quick calls, and some very interesting people on the other end of the phone. They called Doug Ford's people, for instance, right away to let them know about this, because this represents a mortal threat to the manufacturing base of Ontario in the auto sector, these threats to put in tariffs. And so they got quick reassurance from him. They reached out to Brian Mulroney, veteran of trade discussions, tough negotiations with the U.S. president. And he gave them some advice. And then they swung Chrystia Freeland into action to try and depersonalize it, take it away from the Prime Minister, while reiterating the same arguments that the Prime Minister had made a day earlier.
We have seconds left. That tweet, very public, very personal in its attack on the Prime Minister. Have you seen anything like this before from a U.S. president?
No, I haven't. I mean, there have been ugly moments, but it's always been private, never so pointed, never so public. Never so aimed directly at a Canadian chief executive of a government either. It is unprecedented in the public way and in the personal way that President Trump went after the Prime Minister.
Okay, I'll leave it there. So this is May 31st. This was ahead of the G7. Sorry, that was out of order. I apologize. And here's Trump yesterday.
This has to do, they used to call it Nafta. We're going to call it the United States-Mexico Trade Agreement. We'll get rid of the name Nafta. It has a bad connotation because the United States was hurt very badly by Nafta.
So I think that President Trump is being pretty straightforward. I think that if Ms. Freeland, who was swung into action on June 10th, and who has not been able to do anything since then, all summer, and who was in Europe the other day, not doing anything, presumably. And I don't say that tongue-in-cheek. I say that it seems like she was going there to try and get some support. It doesn't seem like she's trying to fix the situation with the United States at all. And that's problematic because they represent 20% of our economy. So mismanagement after avoidable misstep after avoidable misstep, they start to look like they're on purpose. It starts to look like Justin Trudeau's meaning to sabotage Canada's economic future. For what? So we can send money around the world? To do what? Keep some empty buildings lights on? It makes no sense. The government and the way they're governing make no sense. The way they're approaching this trade war is like they're talking down to a petulant child. But this guy controls the entire U.S. economy and can close the border to Canada at the stroke of a pen. He's not due some respect. He's not due negotiating in good faith. Negotiations have to do with money and not with virtue signaling feminism. My goodness. So, what do you think, dear watcher? Do you think that our government is doing a good job in negotiating NAFTA? Do you want the next government to continue this trade war tack with Mr. Trump? I don't.